This is a disclaimer. I am just a robot that loves football. Please forgive me for my mispronunciations. I am still learning the nuances of human pronunciation. Now, without further ado.
Brasil! Brasil!
The story of football cannot be told without a chapter devoted to the nation of Brazil, with the two being so deeply ingrained in the sport that they are ubiquitous. The Brazilians have provided a great deal to the game, with flair, technical ability, and dribbling, all in abundance. A carefree attacking philosophy is their guiding principle, with the beautiful nation producing some of the best attackers in the history of the game. With their vibrance and penchant for the spectacular, the Selecao have appeared in an astounding 7 World Cup finals and 21 tournaments. They lead all nations in World Cup trophies, with 5. Their most recent trophy, which they won 20 years ago, is arguably one of the most cherished of them all. Following their second World Cup finals defeat to France in 1998, Brazil made a near overhaul of their losing squad, keeping only 5 of the players from the original. Their 2002 squad was one of redemption, as Zinedine Zidane and France spoiled Brazil's defense of their 1994 World Cup in 1998 as the world was introduced to a new era of Brazilian football. By 1998, Rivaldo was already known to the world, joining Barcelona and helping them to a domestic double, while being the joint top goalscorer with 19 goals over 34 matches, providing Brazil with a great deal of firepower at 26 years old. In his first World Cup, he was placed up front, with Ronaldo, who, at 21, was being billed as the greatest player in the history of the tournament. As a recent addition to Inter Milan, he scored 25 goals in 32 matches in his first season, adding a Balon d'Or to his trophy cabinet at the end of 1997. The duo combined for 7 goals en route to the final. Their loss shocked many, as their combination of attacking and defensive proficiency was ultimately insufficient. Their failure to defend their title, and subsequent poor performances in qualification for World Cup 2002, demanded an immediate response and overhaul. Thus, in June of 2001 and with 6 matches left for World Cup qualifiers, Filipe Scolari was appointed as manager of Los Selecao. Filipe Scolari was already well known in Brazil as the manager of Grêmio from 1993 until 1996, and Palmeiras from 1998 until 2000. He brought with him a glittering book of credentials, which included 2 Copa Libertadores, 2 Brazilian Serie A titles, and 2 Copa Brazils. He was used to winning. However, despite this, Scolari was often criticized for his un-Brazilian style of play, continually building squads that were galvanized by their work ethic and a team-first mentality rather than individual brilliance. Many believed he would apply his pragmatic approach to his 2002 squad as he took over the position. Despite their star-studded roster, they were at risk of failing to qualify for the World Cup for the first time in history. Scolari's detractors were validated as his final roster was announced, with legend and prolific scorer Romario left off the list. The circumstances surrounding the omission are controversial, as Scolari cited his reasoning as tactical. However, it was most likely driven by a combination of tactics and revenge. In his early days as manager of Brazil, Scolari was heavily reliant and dependent on his veteran players to help him make a good impression as the new Brazilian boss. The 2001 Copa America was an excellent stage for Scolari to accomplish this. However, one of his most vital players, Romario, pulled out due to the stated need for an eye operation. As it turns out, there was no such operation, and Romario instead went on vacation, completely blowing off his team. Brazil would eventually be knocked out by underdogs Honduras in the quarterfinals, with the fallout causing several to question his abilities. He was determined to seek a group of players he could count on. His critics were further validated by his abundance of midfield selections with a strike force that was seen as underwhelming, even though it included Ronaldo. There was a noticeable lack of wingers, inciting nervousness in those expecting a Samba style to take over the flanks. Despite the critical feedback, Scolari stuck to his convictions. He still had a squad of Brazilian players, and, by virtue of this, his team was filled with skill and an abundance of attacking prowess, filling his tactical playbook with endless possibilities. The omission of players like Romario brought opportunities for players such as Ronaldinho, who at 22 years old was taking the world by storm for Paris Saint-Germain. He lit up the city with 9 goals and 8 assists over 28 Ligue 1 matches. Despite his club success, he was still getting his feet wet with Brazil as one of the youngest players on the squad with Kleberson and Kaká. With 3 players of such abilities, albeit with little chemistry, Scolari had to devise a system that would allow for each player to complement the other. As a veteran at 30 years old, Rivaldo was known for his finishing and his playmaking abilities. Ronaldo was proving himself as a generational attacker, with unrivaled attacking instincts, while Ronaldinho had rarely seen qualities. Theoretically, the 3 would seamlessly adapt and complement each other in a system that accounted for 3 attackers. However, each player operated most dangerously in central space, requiring Scolari to take this into consideration. Thus, his system was a collection of philosophies and principles that would achieve this. As it turns out, these guiding principles comprised a form of a legendary playbook that led to a legendary attacking trio that immortalized each man in the game. Given Romario's omission from the squad, it is clear that Scolari took a clinical approach to his team and his tactics. Brazil, whose playing style involves expression and emotion, was to maintain focus throughout without distractions. Emotion and expression were to be seen only in their playing style, not between players. This meant that Scolari's foundational objective was to manage the egos of his men. His squad was star-studded, with each man carrying his own gravitas in terms of international notoriety and level of skill, an aspect that comes with the territory of managing a Brazilian side. To emphasize this point, it is important to note the circumstances that led up to Ronaldo's departure from Barcelona. His arrival at Camp Nou, from PSV, in 1996, was met with tremendous fanfare and expectations, which Ronaldo lived up to, scoring 47 goals in 49 matches across all competitions. He immediately established himself at Barcelona, and at 20, he was one for the future, with the Catalan giants looking to extend his contract for many years. However, despite the success, the contract extension was hijacked at the last minute, with the lure of a lucrative financial offer from the San Siro. The rest is football history, as Ronaldo continued to write his story as one of the greatest strikers of all time. With the sum of €24 million, a then world record transfer fee, Barcelona had the funds to replace Ronaldo with a world-class player. Rivaldo from Deportivo La Coruña was their decision. Rivaldo made the loss of Ronaldo much easier to stomach, as he ended his first season at Barca as the second leading goal scorer, while helping lead Barcelona to a domestic double. Rivaldo continued his spectacular form, and would go on to put a performance that could be viewed as the catalyst, and the genesis for Barcelona's reign as one of the greatest clubs of all time. With his performances, Rivaldo firmly planted himself as a certified Barcelona legend, and one has to wonder how the circumstances affected both men from an egotistical standpoint. Each player would have to have a monk-like level of ego control to remain unaffected. Furthermore, as the favorites to win World Cup 1998, their failure to secure their defending title also undoubtedly weighed heavily on each man's mind, as it weighed on the minds of all Brazilians. To add to the saga, there was a new player who was proving himself to be a remarkable talent. After his first season at Paris Saint-Germain, Ronaldinho burst on the scene upon arrival from Grêmio. Although he was only 22 years old, he was clearly a unique talent, and it was important that his confidence and ego were maintained, as he was integrated into the squad. Each man had demonstrated that they were capable of being the sole playmaker or main component of their respective teams. Now, it was imperative to ensure that each player was frequently involved and given satisfactory attention on the pitch. Thus, from a tactical perspective, foundational identities had to be set, and Scolari achieved this by ensuring that his system did not contain a designated, de facto playmaker. By virtue of this, Scolari could have his men remain fluid in the attacking end with 3 complete attackers comprising his attacking triangle. Scolari could supply an amply spaced canvas in the attacking and neutral thirds, for his men to utilize as they would like, within the framework of his system. Thus each player worked as their own craftsman. They could use their attacking ingenuity to take their chances or supply for a teammate. This accomplished 2 things. It ensured that each man remained engaged and motivated to continue to run into space and lanes with effort and enthusiasm. It ensured that there was no animosity in the event that they were open and missed by a teammate in favor of a shot. This was a brilliant adjustment by Scolari, a true player's coach, who kept his men happy and hungry throughout the tournament. Their work rate remained at a top level, in addition to their engagement and willingness to sacrifice for the team. Given the unique qualities of his attackers, Scolari had a Rubik's Cube of considerations to resolve, to put his men in the best position to make the most impact throughout 90 minutes. With Ronaldinho being capable of everything from an attacking standpoint, he was the most viable option for a diversified playmaking role. His tremendous dribbling, agility, vision, and precision passing meant Ronaldinho could not be fixed on one flank. His vision and passing ability dictated that he be given free rein, remaining as central support while also making himself available as an inverted winger. He could also take his opportunities when they came available. Thus Scolari kept things simple, and the reasoning behind leaving traditional wingers off of his side is because width was optional. It wasn't a necessity, because although Ronaldo and Rivaldo possessed height, they were not renowned for their aerial ability, so deliveries into the box from crosses to incite aerial duels were an afterthought. It was the inner flanks that served as vital attacking grounds for Scolari. Thus, with three central attackers, Scolari could concentrate his men at the attacking focal point, and overwhelm the point of attack. They could work as an inverted or conventional triangle, which was a great deal for defenders to handle. He balanced his central attackers in the form of optional width from his wingbacks, Roberto Carlos and Cafu, on the left and right flanks, respectively. Scolari remained adaptive tactically, as either his frontline attackers or his midfielders could expand wide, to seek to be played into lanes. His wingbacks were complemented internally, with Silva as the holding midfielder. He would expand to fill for the constant forward movement of his wingbacks. This left four men at the back, to shut down any oppositional attacks, meaning they had to remain static and reactive in containment. Scolari's next objective was to dominate the transitional phase of play. To achieve this, he sought to utilize the technical brilliance of his players to control the transition. Since his attackers had zero involvement in the defensive phase of play, they were constantly poised for the counter-attack. Thus, opponents had to play extremely cautiously against Brazil, as they were masters of navigating through transitional space on the counter. They could do this with rapid one-touch flow into space, or by attacking the space in a spread formation, and playing teammates into it.
This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
When they regained control, they alternated between two methods to establish dominance over their opponents. By alternating between modes of attack, with control over the transitional phase, their system was an offensive juggernaut. They maintained a goal differential of +14. His system inspired a constant, attacking style of play, which was Scolari's rendition of the Brazilian way. Defenders were in a state of constant anxiety, which was evident by how quickly they would abandon their shape and assignments. This was another triumph for Scolari, over his doubters, as his ultra-attacking style was maintained throughout the entire tournament. Scolari designed his team to be top-heavy, meaning that he knew his strengths and catered to them. His attacking line was tremendous, with 3 players who shared 4 Balon d'Ors between them by the end of their careers. They had 2 wingbacks, who were arguably the greatest of all time, supplying width. Space was ample in the midfield, despite the fact that as many as 6 Brazilians operated in the space at times. The primary 3, in the midfield, could fill for attacking wingbacks and back up their attackers by filling in on offensive line. Alternatively, the flanks could be taken by the center forwards to deliver crosses in service of the midfielders who could run into the box. Playing without a designated playmaker allowed for the Brazilians to express themselves, with center backs venturing as far as the attacking third with progressive carries. However, the foundation was set with the brick wall, which took various forms within the midfield, all in service of the attackers. Scolari's adaptations made them lethal, in both phases of play. Center forwards could occupy space, with play building from the neutral third. Playing spread and deep ensured that each man on the ball had ample time to deliver. It is interesting to note how Scolari positioned his back 7, who all had a vital role. Since Brazil looked to play as direct as possible, their midfielders had to remain alert and in position. Gilberto Silva, who played all 7 matches, was excellent at holding midfielder, and rarely ventured past the halfway line, was poised to prevent the counter. He was a traditional sweeper in front of his back 2, and thus his positioning was critical. Especially given the fact that his center backs had to expand their operational areas, with 3 at the back. However, he, like any other player on the back line, had the ability and the green light to advance up the pitch with the ball at his feet. Silva could drop in between his center backs, with Kleberson, Juninho, or Edelson given the green light to allow for up to a 6-attacker adaptation. As the matches drew on, and Brazil retained more possession, it would become more difficult for defenders to anticipate which direction the attack was coming from. Each additional attacker was technically proficient and intelligent in their space management. Furthermore, their involvement allowed for the Golden Trio to take up their favored positions to dispatch. The method was critical in allowing for Ronaldo to score one of the greatest goals in World Cup history. As Ronaldo takes the ball in stride, he has a massive area to attack en route to the goal, at full speed. He switches the flow of the attack in an instant. In doing so, he takes on more defenders, however, he keeps them guessing. By narrowing the angle, he opens the possibility of a cross, in addition to a short or far side finish. He is fenced off, on all sides, by 3 defenders as he approaches the box, and if he had not received the ball in stride, he would have been dispossessed of the ball much more easily. However, as Ronaldo is in stride, the defenders must coordinate their movements so as to not risk a penalty. At the same time, the space is collapsing, as Ronaldo's speed nullifies any time to process the situation, meaning the defenders must either react without thinking, or do nothing and maintain the fence. A few seconds and a few touches is all Ronaldo needs, as he already made his decision upon reception of the ball. He does not break stride, as he finishes on the far side, with the outside of his boot. Due to this, the keeper does not have enough time to react, as Ronaldo does not need to set and steady himself for the shot. This is finishing in its purest form. Instinctive. Clinical. It deserves an exhibit in the Louvre, to be played 24/7. Scolari's principles and tactics contributed to a system that required a great deal of ability, will and skill to withstand. Ultimately, Brazil won all 7 matches of World Cup 2002, scoring 18 goals and conceding 4 times. 2 of the 3 members of the Golden Triangle would go on to occupy the first and second place on the Golden Boot list for the tournament's leading goal scorer. 4 members of the team ended up on FIFA's official team of the tournament. Ronaldo controversially won the silver ball, with preference given to Oliver Kahn, who led the tournament with 5 clean sheets, with Brazil's keeper, Marcos, in second. With his 8 goals, Ronaldo tied himself, with fellow Brazilian Leonidas and Argentine, Guillermo Stabile, for 5th place, as the leading goal scorers in history, in the World Cup finals. Ronaldo would end the year with his 2nd Balon d'Or, with Ronaldinho winning the prestigious award for himself 3 years later. Each of the 3 attackers has a legitimate case to be considered as Brazil's greatest player of all time, and by virtue, one of the greatest players in the history of the game. The fact that they all played on the same team, simultaneously, in such a dominant fashion, and with little time to get acquainted as an attacking trio, is something for football fans around the world to savor. Few squads in history will be able to match their attacking prowess. They inspired a new generation of remarkably talented young players, who were looking to carry the torch that this squad led. Their abilities were identified, cultivated, and maximized by their manager, who did a remarkable job of appeasing each superstar and getting the most out of them. Ultimately, each man carved out a prominent chapter in football history and established himself as a football legend.